The most expensive baby food on this list costs $39 a can. The least expensive safe alternative costs $2.78. The cheaper product tested clean. The expensive one, hospitalized 48 infants. Price does not predict safety. Neither does the word organic. Neither does the logo your pediatrician handed you in a sample bag. 9 baby food brands failed through independent lab results, federal recalls, or evidence surfaced in active lawsuits. Every one of them gets named, along with 3 that actually passed testing, and the single ingredient swap that eliminates the biggest contamination source in most infant diets. Lead, arsenic, cadmium, and mercury occur naturally in soil. No manufacturer is pouring metals into baby food. The negligence is structural, sourcing from polluted agricultural regions, building products around crops that absorb metals at extreme rates, and then making it as difficult as possible for parents to see the test results. The FDA finalized lead guidance in early 2025. The limits are voluntary, no fines for exceeding them. California stepped in with a law forcing brands to publish heavy metal data publicly. Some responded with open access. Others built digital obstacle courses. Over 400 lawsuits alleging neurodevelopmental harm are now consolidated in federal court. The legal connection between contamination and individual diagnoses remains contested in court. The contamination data itself is challenged by no one. Number 9. Lesser evil Lil Puffs. 112% of California's absolute daily lead limit in one serving of a snack puff marketed as a premium vegetable option for toddlers. Consumer Reports tested 80 baby foods over 7 years. The lesser evil Lil Puff's Intergalactic Voyager Veggie Blend contained more lead per serving than every single one of them. A second flavor registered at 60% of the daily ceiling. The contamination pathway is cassava flour, a root crop that pulls lead directly out of the soil and concentrates it dramatically when ground into powder. Despite these findings, Lesser Evil did not recall the product. Contaminated bags stayed on shelves at Whole Foods and Amazon, while the company offered vague commitments about eventually phasing out the ingredient. Lead embeds in developing bone and brain tissue. It does not wash out. Avoid. Number 8. Serenity Kids Grain-Free Puffs, $6 a canister. Marketing built on regenerative farming and rigorous soil screening. The Consumer Reports lab found their tomato and herb bone broth puffs delivered 53% of California's daily lead limit in a single serving, from the same cassava flour that contaminated the Lesser Evil puffs. Sorghum-based puffs from a competing brand tested near zero in the identical study. Serenity Kids chose the contaminated ingredient, wrapped it in premium branding, and charged 3 times what the cleaner option costs. They also gate their California-mandated test results behind lot code barriers. You cannot check the numbers before you buy. Remember that tactic. It shows up again and again on this list. The premium you are paying buys packaging, not safety. Number 7. By Heart Infant Formula. Everything so far involves heavy metals accumulating slowly over months. This entry involves a bacterium that paralyzes babies within days. 48 infants across 17 states were hospitalized for botulism between late 2025 and February 2026 after consuming By Heart Whole Nutrition Infant Formula. Every case required intensive medical intervention. Botulinum toxin attacks progressively. First swallowing weakens, then head control disappears. Then the muscles governing breathing begin to fail. The FDA used whole genome sequencing to trace the root cause to contaminated organic milk powder from By Heart's upstream supplier. Clostridium botulinum spores survived the dehydrated manufacturing environment and colonized the infant's immature intestinal tracts. By Heart charges $39 a can and built its identity on science-backed formulation. Contaminated formula remained on retail shelves weeks into the recall, forcing the FDA to issue emergency warnings to retailers in December 2025. A brand responsible for the largest infant botulism outbreak in recent memory needs years of demonstrated safety before any parent considers returning. Avoid. Number 6. Sprout Organics. When Congress subpoenaed baby food companies for internal testing records in 2021, Sprout refused to produce them. Federal investigators called the stonewalling a source of grave concern. The concern was validated 4 years later. In September 2025, Sprout recalled sweet potato, apple, and spinach pouches for elevated lead across 4 lot codes, distributed to 28 states. The contaminated pouches carried shelf lives stretching into February 2026, meaning parents who stocked up could have been unknowingly feeding lead-tainted puree for months before hearing about the withdrawal. Lead mimics calcium at the molecular level. A baby's body does not filter it out, but actively pulls it into bone and developing brain tissue. A company that hid data from Congress and then shipped contaminated product to 28 states has not earned a place in your nursery. Number 5. Target Good and Gather. 2 infants in Oregon were diagnosed with clinical lead poisoning in July 2025. The source was not old paint, not compromised plumbing. It was an unopened jar of Good and Gather baby food that had been sitting in the pantry since before the recall. Target had pulled over 25,000 units of their vegetable puree off shelves in March for elevated lead. The FDA closed the active recall in May, but the pouches carried expiration dates through December, and the ones in those Oregon kitchens were never returned. The gap between a corporate recall announcement and a parent actually hearing about it is where the real damage lands. The contamination profile runs deeper than metals. Independent analysis by Friends of the Earth detected 29 synthetic pesticides in Good and Gather fruit purees, 16 classified as highly hazardous, 5 meeting the biochemical definition of PFAS, chemicals the body cannot break down or excrete. One detected compound, flubendiamide, is a pesticide banned entirely for agricultural use in the United States, raising direct questions about where Target's contract manufacturer is sourcing raw ingredients. 2 poisoned infants. 29 pesticides. A banned agrochemical in a product marketed for babies. This is not a brand with a marginal quality concern. Number 4. Walmart Parent's Choice. This entry is not about a test that came back bad. It is about a corporate decision to make the test easier to pass. Subpoenaed internal documents revealed that Walmart raised its own allowable limit for inorganic arsenic in baby food from 23 parts per billion to 100. The threshold did not shift because new science emerged. It shifted because the agricultural supply chain feeding Parent's Choice was contaminated, and sourcing cleaner ingredients cost more than adjusting the internal spreadsheet. 100 parts per billion. The EPA sets the arsenic limit for drinking water at 10. Walmart decided its baby food, consumed daily by infants whose bodies absorb toxins at rates far exceeding adults, could contain 10 times the drinking water standard. Independent testing confirmed the outcome that policy guaranteed: elevated arsenic, lead, and cadmium across the product line. Walmart is now a primary defendant in federal litigation representing children diagnosed with autism and ADHD following years of cumulative exposure. Chronic arsenic exposure disrupts how developing cells produce energy. The damage accumulates silently and does not reverse. If Parent's Choice is in your cart, take it out. Number 3. Happy Baby. The organic seal on every Happy Baby product has been shielding one of the worst contamination profiles in the industry. Federal investigators subpoenaed the brand's internal data and found that more than a quarter of all Happy Baby products exceeded 100 parts per billion of arsenic. Nearly 1 in 5 exceeded 10 parts per billion of lead. 65% topped 5 parts per billion of cadmium. The worst result belonged to their sweet potato and carrot puffs. 318 parts per billion of inorganic arsenic. The drinking water standard is 10. Happy Baby packed over 30 times that concentration into a snack designed for babies learning to self-feed. Nurture, the parent company, is now a defendant in the same federal mega-litigation as Walmart and Gerber. Their test data remains gated behind the same lot code barriers as the rest. But the deeper deception here is the organic label itself. Organic certification restricts synthetic pesticides during farming. It has zero authority over heavy metals already present in the soil. A rice puff can carry the USDA organic seal, and simultaneously contain 300 parts per billion of a known human carcinogen. The word on the label is not the data in the lab. Avoid. Number 2. Beechnut. 913 parts per billion of inorganic arsenic. That figure, found by Alaska state health officials during unannounced testing of beechnut infant rice cereal, is one of the most extreme contamination results in the modern history of commercial baby food. The FDA's action limit for arsenic in infant rice cereal is 100. Beechnut exceeded it by more than 9 times. The finding triggered an emergency recall and a corporate retreat that reveals the depth of the problem. Beechnut permanently exited the infant rice cereal market. They did not reformulate. They abandoned an entire product category because the contamination was too deeply embedded in their supply chain to resolve economically. Subpoenaed internal records explain how it reached that point. The company had set internal limits permitting up to 5,000 parts per billion of lead and 3,000 of cadmium in certain raw ingredient additives. Those were not safety guardrails. They were permission structures for contaminated sourcing. And the brand trusted by generations of American families was operating under them for years. Walking away from rice cereal does not eliminate liability for the products already consumed. Beechnut remains a primary defendant in federal litigation representing children with permanent neurodevelopmental injuries. Their current transparency posture is the worst on this list. Consumer Reports auditors in 2026 found that viewing a single test result requires a UPC, a lot number, a best by date, a CAPTCHA, and multiple disclaimer screens. That architecture is not built to inform, it is built to deter. Avoid. Number 1. Gerber. Gerber is the default. Hospital sample bags, pediatrician offices, every supermarket aisle in the country. The illustrated baby face on the jar is the most recognized symbol in infant nutrition worldwide. That trust was assembled over generations. So was the contamination record. Federal testing confirmed Gerber's rice cereals carried nearly 90 parts per billion of inorganic arsenic. Their carrot purees spiked to 87 parts per billion of cadmium, more than double the European Union's strict limit of 40. Cadmium bioaccumulates in an infant's kidneys and developing nervous system, producing measurable physiological harm with chronic dietary exposure. Gerber is not peripheral to the federal litigation. With over 400 lawsuits consolidated in MDL 3101, alleging that children developed autism and ADHD after years of consuming contaminated products, the company occupies the center of the largest mass tort the baby food industry has ever faced. Market dominance placed their products in more homes, more often, for more years than any competitor. And that volume is now reflected directly in the legal docket. The contamination is not confined to legacy products. In January 2026, Gerber recalled arrowroot biscuits nationwide after soft plastic and paper fragments were found baked into the product. The foreign material originated at a third-party flour supplier, which means Gerber's incoming quality controls failed to catch physical contamination before those biscuits reached infant mouths. Fairness demands a note of complexity here. Under California's new transparency law, Gerber has earned one of the highest compliance scores among legacy brands by publishing heavy metal data openly. That improvement is genuine, but open reporting on current batches does not retroactively protect the children who consumed tainted products for decades. And a physical contamination recall in the same year proves that the outsourced supply chain feeding the world's most recognized baby food brand remains structurally vulnerable to failures that no transparency score can prevent. The most trusted name in the baby aisle is simultaneously the most sued. Avoid Gerber until the evidence, not the logo, supports the trust. 9 brands to remove, 3 to replace them with. Once Upon a Farm solved the contamination problem by refusing to use the ingredients that cause it. No rice, no cassava. Their pups are built on sorghum, a grain that absorbs dramatically less lead from soil than either of those crops. In the same Consumer Reports testing that flagged Lesser Evil and Serenity Kids, Once Upon a Farm's sorghum puffs recorded among the lowest lead levels of any baby food analyzed since 2017. Their purees use high-pressure cold processing to eliminate pathogens without heat degradation. And under California's transparency law, they received a top-tier rating and voluntarily published data before the legal deadline, including for products the law does not require them to disclose. Around $2.78 to $3.28 per pouch at Target, Whole Foods, Kroger, or direct from their site. White Leaf Provisions starts at the soil. Their Demeter-certified biodynamic farming manages soil health at a depth designed to prevent metals from entering the plant in the first place, not catch them after harvest. Independent labs returned non-detect results for arsenic, lead, and mercury across multiple product lines, with cadmium safely under the European Union's strict limit of 40 parts per billion. They hold both the Clean Label Project Purity Award and the distinction of being the first shelf-stable baby food in the United States, certified glyphosate residue-free. When a product carries both certifications, it means independent labs have verified the absence of metals, pesticides, plasticizers, and the most widely used herbicide on Earth, around $3 per pouch, available on Amazon, at Whole Foods, and direct from their website. Square Baby tests deeper than the law requires. Every batch is screened for all 4 heavy metals before distribution, with an internal detection threshold of 3 parts per billion, half the 6 parts per billion floor most brands report under. When their results read non-detect at that sensitivity, the margin of safety is measurably higher than what the California mandate demands. Their frozen meal format eliminates the shelf-stable processing steps that introduce contamination risk in competing products. And they earned top-tier transparency compliance with fully open, unrestricted data access. Meals run about $4 to $7 each, depending on plan size, shipped direct to your door. If replacing everything at once is not realistic, make one change first. Eliminate any snack puff or cereal listing rice flour or cassava flour in the first 3 ingredients. Those 2 crops are the dominant contamination source behind the worst entries on this list. Swapping to a sorghum-based or oat-based daily snack removes the single largest heavy metal pathway in most infant diets. Once Upon a Farm's puffs, at under $3.50 per unit, are the most accessible clean option on this list and available at most major retailers. Starting there covers the highest risk product in most babies' daily rotation. The certification that matters for heavy metals is the Clean Label Project Purity Award. It verifies independent, continuous testing for over 400 contaminants at parts per billion sensitivity. On the ingredient list, look for sorghum or oat as the primary grain. Avoid rice flour, brown rice syrup, and cassava flour, especially in daily use snacks where cumulative exposure compounds fastest. And disregard the word organic as a heavy metal safety signal. Organic restricts synthetic pesticides during farming. It tells you nothing about metals already in the soil. An organic cassava puff can carry the USDA seal and still deliver more than a full day's lead limit in a single serving. 9 brands. Heavy metals, botulism, plastic fragments, and banned pesticides. The thread connecting all of them is the same. A system where testing is functionally voluntary, enforcement carries no penalties, and the companies producing food for the most vulnerable population operate under weaker requirements than the ones bottling water. The 3 brands that passed prove this does not have to be the standard. Which of these products was in your home? What did you replace it with? Put it in the comments. Every answer helps the next parent making this decision.